All right, good afternoon. Are we ready to begin?
Yes, Ms. Henderson, we are ready here. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina Henderson. I'm the chair of the Transportation Planning Board, and I call this virtual meeting of the TPB on February 21st, 2024 to order. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me. Most of our staff who will be participating in this meeting are at the COG building. So if you have any issues with your audio or video connection, please email Conti or Lynn. Before we proceed with the roll call, for the benefit of those observing this meeting via the TPB's YouTube channel, I just want to lay out a little bit of how we're going to facilitate today's meeting. So we'll start with the roll call. After we determine that we have a quorum, we'll have the staff summarize any comments we've received from the public. During the agenda items where an action is needed, we'll have the presenters complete their briefing, then we'll make a motion to adopt the resolution and then invite a second motion. After this, we'll open it up for questions or comments from members by jurisdiction. And I'll only be calling for the nays or abstentions when we take votes. So anybody who doesn't say nay or abstention, we're assuming that you're voting present. For agenda items that are informational, after the presenters will brief us, I will turn to members for questions or comments, and we'll call on members by jurisdiction. That sounds good to everyone. We'll move ahead to the roll call. So Lynn, when you're ready.
Great, thanks, Chair Henderson. So I'm going to list the jurisdiction or agency, if you could state your name. And don't worry, we're keeping an eye on the participant list, and because it's virtual, everyone gets captured. But this is super helpful so everyone can hear who's here. All right, starting with the District of Columbia, DC Council Charles Allen. DC Council, Ms. Christina Henderson.
Here.
DC Council Matt Fruman. Okay, gotcha. DC Department of Transportation.
Sandra.
Thanks. DC Office of Planning.
Rebecca Schwartzman.
Can I chime in?
Maryland. Oh, Mr. Fruman.
We got you. Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Moving on to Maryland. City of Bowie. Charles County. College Park.
Present.
Thank you. Frederick County.
Commissioner present.
Thanks, Mark. City of Frederick.
Present.
Thanks, Kelly. City of Gaithersburg.
Neil Harris is here.
Thanks, Neil. City of Greenbelt.
Kristen Weaver is here for the belt.
Thank you. City of Laurel. Montgomery County.
Gary Ehrenrich is present.
Thanks, Gary.
Marilyn Balcom also.
Thanks, Ms. Balcom. Prince George's County.
Olashea Lubenle, present.
The Olashea.
And Victor Weisberg present.
Thanks, Vic. City of Rockville. Tacoma Park. Maryland Department of Transportation.
Heather Murphy's here.
Heather. Maryland House of Delegates. And Maryland Senate. They're a little busy right now. Okay. Moving on to Virginia, City of Alexandria.
Canick present.
Arlington County. City of Fairfax. I saw Tom. Fairfax County.
Walter Alcorn's here.
Okay, I saw Walter, I saw James, thank you. Falls Church.
Dave Snyder, City of Falls Church.
Thanks. Fauquier County. I see Adam. Thanks, Adam. Loudoun County.
Mike Turner.
Thank you.
Rob Donaldson present.
Thanks, Rob. City of Manassas.
Pam Sebesky present.
Thank you, Pam. City of Manassas Park.
Jeanette Rischel here.
Thank you. Prince William County.
Vic Angu here.
Thank you.
Megan Landis, present.
To Megan. Virginia Department of Transportation.
We're here.
Thanks, Bill. Virginia House of Delegates. Virginia Senate. Moving on to WMATA.
Allison Davis here.
Thanks, Allison. Our ex officio members, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, National Capital Planning Commission.
Julia Costers, present.
Julia, thank you. Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority and National Park Service. Okay, that completes the roll call. We have a quorum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lynn. Now for public comments. Lynn, would you mind summarizing what comments we received?
Great, happily. So between at noon on Tuesday, January 16th and noon Tuesday, February 20th, yesterday, the TPB received 2 comments submitted via email. A summary as well as each comment can be found on our meeting webpage. So I'll briefly summarize those comments now. Tad Aburn, a member of a DC Environmental Justice Coalition, provided a comment regarding his earlier comments and letters on transportation-related air pollution. They asked the TPB to follow its federally approved public participation guidance and policies and to respond appropriately to the issues raised in the comments and letters of the past year on air pollution local hotspots. Mr. Aburn also offered language that he says he found in various documents regarding public input and various policies. I just want to add that last month during 2 separate times in the meeting, we mentioned and we actually demonstrated the comments were responded to under item 5 posted with the meeting materials. Second of all, Bill Pugh, a senior policy fellow with the Coalition for Smarter Growth, provided comments that relate to lowering greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. Mr. Pugh noted that at the current rate of progress on the National Capital Trail Network, its completion will take 30 years. Mr. Pugh also noted that within the past 2 years since the board adopted its greenhouse gas reduction targets, there have been no performance metrics or tracking of the strategies reported back to understand how the region is meeting its goals. Mr. Pugh commends the TPB's climate resilience work, but emphasized that the TPB also needs to be a regional convener and leader on greenhouse gas reduction for transportation. So as I mentioned, all the comments are found on our meeting page. That concludes my report. Thank you, Chair Henderson.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about the public comments?
No hands raised, Ms. Henderson.
Great. All right. So we'll move to the approval. We'll move to the approval of the January 17th minutes. We've been provided a written summary of this. I trust that members have had an opportunity to review. I move that we adopt the minutes from the January 17th, 2024 meeting as provided. May I have a second?
Second, Denise Mitchell, College Park.
Thank you, Denise. Are there any corrections or addition or? Nope.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, so let's move to the vote. Are there any nays or abstentions from the District of Columbia? From Maryland? From Virginia? Other agencies? Great. The meeting minutes are adopted. We'll now have a Amy Garbarini, who's the chair of the technical committee. She'll summarize the meeting's outcomes of their February 2nd meeting for us. Amy?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The technical committee met Friday, February 2nd, where we began with briefings on 4 items that were reviewed for inclusion on today's TPB agenda. The first item was a briefing on the National Capital Trail Network. TPB members were given the opportunity to provide comments by February 9th, and we will be looking to approve the updated network at today's meeting. Next, the technical committee was briefed on a number of work activities from the FY24 UPWP, including work on equity, climate change, and safety. Next, the committee was briefed on the draft FY25 UPWP, focusing mainly on the new activities and projects. Lastly, the committee was briefed on the draft FY25 Commuter Connections Work Program, which the board will be asked to approve during next month's meeting. Additionally, 3 items were presented for information and discussion, including an update on Visualize 2050 and next steps. Next was a presentation on TPB staff's plan to use the new EPA Moves 4 model to estimate criteria pollutant emissions in the upcoming Visualize 2050 air quality conformity analysis. Lastly was a briefing on the scope of work to continue the intercity travel study in the National Capital Region. And that concludes the technical committee report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any hands raised in the chat, Ms. Henderson.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. We'll now move to the Community Advisory Committee report. They met on February 15th, asking the new chair, Ra Amin, to give us highlights.
Hey, good afternoon. Audio check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, all. Yeah, I wanted to start by saying that it was my first opportunity to chair the 2024 CAC. I got the opportunity to select the new vice chairs there, and the selection was made from two former chairs, which was Ashley Hudson from Virginia. She was 2022 chair, and Richard Wallace of Maryland, 2023 chairs. So they will serve as our 2024 vice chairs. We also received a update from John Swanson about the upcoming Community Leadership Institute, which seems to be generating a lot of interest from our members. But on to our robust discussion. We received two informational presentations, and quite robust discussions came from there with a lot of comments and concerns. The first was on the Transportation Resiliency Program from TPB staff Catherine Raison. And you have the report, so I won't detail you with all of that. But the two main things that we came out of that with, the two main questions and comments were that it's important for this work on resiliency to be incorporated and into the update of the Regional Transportation Plan and Visualize 2050. The CAC was very adamant about that. And the second comment off of that presentation was, is the research activities considering impacts of climate change on neighborhoods and communities? And the second report presentation that we received was on the public engagement process of Visualize 2050. Another very robust conversation. Comments and questions that followed there was how to conduct the research. Some of the suggestions that came from was the use of radio, the use of local government meetings. How are we including seniors in this information? And we should conduct in-person sessions as well. And you have the report, and I will stop there. Are there any questions for the CAC?
Thank you, Rob. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see any either, Ms. Henderson.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
We'll now turn to the steering committee actions and the report from the director. Conti?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chair and members of the board. You have a detailed report from me in your packet. I'll briefly review the contents, and I'll be glad to respond to any questions. The steering committee met on February 2nd and approved 3 amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program. The first amendment, requested by the District Department of Transportation, adds about $22 million in federal and district funds for the Aspen Street Improvements Project in Northwest, and an additional about $600,000 for pavement, curb gutter, sidewalk improvements on a few streets in Ward 2. The second amendment to the TIP was requested by the Maryland Department of Transportation, and that adds about $48 million in FTA's low and no emissions grant and with some local and university matching funds for the University of Maryland to invest in battery electric buses, about 35 of them, and also to install charging infrastructure for those. And an additional $14 million in federal funds to implement projects under Maryland's National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And these would be installed along Maryland's designated alternate fuel corridors. And there's also some third-party private sector funds used for this effort. And the last amendment was requested by the Virginia Department of Transportation, which reduces the funding for the Ryan Road widening project by about $500,000. And also the total project cost has now been downwardly revised by about $2.7 million. Now, turning to some of the letters that the staff has issued on behalf of the board, staff issued 5 letters of support for the applications for some federal grants, particularly the RAISE grant. Loudoun County is requesting a RAISE grant for a W&OD trail project. Maryland Department of Transportation is requesting some funds for the Maryland 210 bike and pedestrian connectivity project. Frederick County is requesting some funds for its Mountville Road streetscape. Prince William County is requesting funds for their Old Bridge Road intersection improvements. And also the District of Columbia, DDOT is requesting some RAISE grants for the New York Avenue Bridge Lincoln Trail Connector project. Staff also issued 2 letters of support for other applications of federal funds. Both of them for DDOT. One of them was for the Bridge Investment Grant Fund, and that was once again for the New York Avenue Bridge project. And the second one was for the Southeast Southwest Freeway Bridge rehabilitation. Now, turning to a few announcements and updates. A piece of very promising news, at least from the staff perspective, is about the operating funding situation for WMATA for 2025. You will recall that last year WMATA had indicated that it was facing a $750 million deficit in fully funding its operations in fiscal 2025, and that WMATA members had been working on addressing the situation. The Council of Governments had been convening regional and state leaders on the matter as well. So all of this intense, focused work is beginning to pay off. And due to the actions of the executive and legislative leadership in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, both at the state and local levels in Virginia, and some of the actions that WMATA has taken internally to revise their operating budget estimates, it appears that WMATA's operations funding for FY 2025 will be secured. To be clear, there are a few pending legislative actions needed in Virginia and Maryland, but those appear to be processing in the ongoing legislative sessions. We remain hopeful that that will all come to pass, and WMATA's funding for FY 2025 would be secured. To be clear, there is more work to be done to find a long-term solution for WMATA's capital and operating fund. COG is working with this along with WMATA, and the TPB is supporting COG's work. There's a memo of all of these things in your package from me to you. A reminder that there are 2 more weeks that TPB will be accepting applications for the technical assistance grants that it offers under 2 programs, the Transportation Land Use Connections Program and the Regional Roadway Safety Program. March 8 is the deadline for applications. Members will recall last year, both of these programs were oversubscribed. Another piece of information to share, on February 7th of this year, the US EPA promulgated a new and more stringent standard for particulate matter in our air. The current annual standard is 12 micrograms per cubic meter of particulate matter that is 2.5 microns or smaller. That standard has been strengthened to 9 micrograms per cubic meter. The latest official data for our region indicates that the particulate matter in our region's air is at about 8.6 micrograms per cubic meter. So we are below the new standards, which is a good thing, but not by a large amount. So it's something we need to continue to watch out for. Finally, the TPB's Community Leadership Institute will be hosting its sessions this year on April 25th, April 30th, and on May 2nd. Members will recall that the TPB's Community Leadership Institute is a free educational program that provides residents of the region who are engaged and active in their communities with some tools on how to think regionally and act locally with regards to transportation decision making. So if any of you are aware of any individuals within your communities who would be a good candidate, please advise them to apply. The application and the details are on page 40 of my report to you. That is what was in the return report. Two additional announcements, if I may, Ms. Chair, that was not in my return report. The first one of your staffs, Patrick Zeliakis, is retiring at the end of this week after a little more than 35 years of service to the TPB and the Council of Governments and its members and residents. Over this period, Patrick had become TPB and COG's resident knowledge bank on all things related to traffic operations. We on your staff also came to know Patrick as a truly caring, considerate, supportive, and always the first to volunteer type of colleague to all of us on your staff. So we thank Patrick for his service and wish him a joyful retirement. The second piece of announcement, a little bit sad news. I regret to inform you, those of you who may not already be aware, that the long-term mayor of the city of Fairfax, John Mason, passed away on February 7th at the age of 89. While he served on the city's council from 1986 to 2002, he was mayor from 1990 to 2002. For most of that term, Mayor Mason was a very active participant on the COG and the Transportation Planning Board. He chaired the Transportation Planning Board in 2001. While Mayor Mason is known for a lot of his contributions, two things that stand out to, at least to my mind, he was very active in the development of the first policy document for the Transportation Planning Board, the 1998 TPB vision document. And during his tenure on the TPB, he tirelessly championed the TPB to stay focused and pay attention and to start some new activities focused on transportation systems management and operations. Both of those work activities continue at the TPB today. I do have some information on the planned funeral services. If members are interested, I'll be happy to share with you. So that concludes my report, Ms. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Con team. Does anyone have any questions?
Tom Ross here.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, I just want to thank Conti for mentioning John's passing. John was a mentor, a friend, and a colleague to many of us in the city of Fairfax over many, many years. After his departure from political life, he stayed very active in the community and was instrumental and a leading advocate for the arts in the community, and started our Spotlight in the Arts program and other initiatives, continued on after retirement to do many, many great community things. So thank you for honoring and remembering him today.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone else have any questions? We'll move on then to our chairman's remarks. And I want to start also by thanking Conti for recalling John Mason's service, not only to this board, but to the region. And we mourn his passing and are certainly grateful for his many decades of service to our region. Earlier this year, one of the members of the TPB's Community Advisory Committee from Maryland resigned after completing the first of a 2-year term. Vice Chair Neil Harris from Gaithersburg and representing Maryland has been working closely with staff over the past month to vet other applicants and has an appointment recommendation. Neil, if you want to share your recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so excuse me, I'm recommending Bernie Lucasio to be a member of the committee. Bernie is a resident of Gaithersburg, has recently retired after a 48-year career in radio. If you listen to WMZQ, you probably know him as Bernie Lucas. Bernie has a strong interest in transportation, and not just because he lives in the area and deals with traffic, but he is also a retired man with a walking disability. So walkability, pedestrian safety, and handicap concerns are very interesting to him, as well as safety for the growing senior population of the region. So I'm very pleased and proud to recommend Bernie for the committee.
Thank you, Neil. If there are no objections, I'll take this recommendation as unanimous consent of the board. All right, hearing none. He's in. Great. Last but not least, I just want to draw attention to Conti's memo with the information on the progress being made to close the gap for WMATA's operating budget for FY 2025. Members of the board will recall that last year, the TPB revised its schedule to receive project inputs for updating our long-range plan, partly to provide WMATA and its members with more time to figure out the ways to address the immediate term operating budget shortfall WMATA was facing. On behalf of the TPB, I want to thank the executive and legislative leaders in the district, Maryland, and Virginia, and the Virginia localities for agreeing to provide additional funding for WMATA. I understand that there's still some legislative work that needs to happen to finalize this, even here in the District of Columbia. But that everything is sort of moving in the right direction right now. And so we're sure hopeful that everything comes to pass. The TPB has said that the safe and reliable, efficient transit system is critical to the region's mobility and accessibility. And WMATA is the largest transit service system in the region, and its financial viability must be predictable and sustainable as it impacts us all. While the TPB is glad to note the promising development on the immediate operating funding situation with WMATA, we certainly recognize that there's more work to be done by all of WMATA members, as well as non-WMATA service jurisdictions within the region, to develop a new model of funding that is predictable, dedicated, and sustainable, not just for operating, but also for capital. While TPB does not work directly with members on capital and operating budgetary matters, the TPB works very closely with the COG board to facilitate such discussions that merit a regional agreement. Many of us on the TPB also serve on the COG board, so we can bring the TPB's commitment to the WMATA to such efforts. My colleague on both the council and here at the TPB, Charles Allen, is the chair of the COG board this year, and he is leading the COG board's effort to work with WMATA and the region to develop a long-term funding model. Charles, thank you for making this a priority for COG this year, and I look forward to the TPB working with COG on this important initiative. With that, we'll delve into our remaining agenda items. So we'll start with some action items. I believe Lynn briefed us, or I don't believe, Lynn did brief us about this last month, the planning area boundary adjustment and the resulting TPB membership change. So we are being asked today to take action to revise our planning area, amend our bylaws, and make a change to our membership. I'll ask Lynn to summarize and just give a refresher for folks in terms of why we're doing this. So Lynn, when you're ready.
Great, thanks, Chair. So actually, because this is pretty quick, Ms. Henderson did an amazing job summarizing it. So just a recap, in 2010, boundaries changed from the census. In 2020, they change again. They change with the census, and we are per the federal regs, have to look at what that does to our metropolitan planning, to the urban areas. And in this case, when Virginia approved their urban area through the USDOT process, it turns out Fauquier County is no longer contiguous to Prince William County. So they had the option of staying on the TPB or leaving the TPB, and they have requested that Virginia and TPB take the steps to remove themselves from the TPB. So what that means for us is and if you look in your materials, the resolution defines it all, and the resolve clause basically states that we're asking the board to approve the amended TPB bylaws. The bylaws change simply removes Fauquier as a member and updates the map. We are asking the board, as the other part of the resolve clause, is to approve the adjusted map, the planning area boundary itself, so it basically just follows the Prince William County border. And lastly, the action is to remove Fauquier County as a TPB member. So the map is included, all the backup materials are included. This would be the second full presentation you've seen from it. We've talked to Tech Committee about it as well. We're happy to take questions, but I recommend that the TPB approve Resolution R6-2024.
Thank you, Lynn. Lynn already made a motion to adopt Resolution R6-2024. Is there a second? And if so,
Fauquier
please,
County, second.
if you can state your name and your jurisdiction. Sorry.
Certainly. Adam Schellenberger, Fauquier County, second.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions on the matter for Lynn?
I don't see any raised hands icons in the chat, Ms. Henderson.
Okay, then we'll call for the vote. Are there any nays and abstentions from the District of Columbia? All right, from Maryland? From Virginia? The other agencies? All right, hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Lynn. We'll move on to the National Capital Trail Network update. So last month, we heard from Andrew Meese about the updates to the TPB's National Capital Trail Network that staff has been working on. Today, we are being asked to adopt this updated network. So I'm going to ask Andrew to just give her a little refresher, and then we'll go ahead and take the vote. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair Henderson, and good afternoon, members of the board. I'm here today to present the updated National Capital Trail Network. In your mail out and shown on the screen was the packet for item 8 with a proposed resolution and supporting memorandum. Let me call a few things to your attention. As noted in the memorandum, staff presented the proposed updated National Capital Trail Network to the TPB at your January 17th, 2024 meeting, providing the background to the network as a visualized 2045 aspirational initiative, analysis of the updated network, success stories of project completions since 2020, and an introduction to the interactive web page created for the network on the TPB website. On January 17th, board members raised questions concerning specific trails in Loudoun County and the City of Fairfax. Since then, staff worked with Loudoun County and City of Fairfax staffs to confirm that the network information included for those jurisdictions in the update is accurate and reflects the wishes of those jurisdictions at this time. Specifically, the Loudoun County segment raised in the vicinity of Belmont Ridge Road and North Star Boulevard remains in the National Capital Trail Network, but with a partial rerouting compared to the 2020 network. The George Snyder Trail in the City of Fairfax remains on the comprehensive list of the TPB's bicycle and pedestrian plan for the National Capital Region, but City of Fairfax staff communicated to TPB staff that the city is not nominating for the trail for inclusion in the National Capital Trail Network at this time, perhaps at a later date. Also, the memorandum notes that there were no changes to the overall set of existing and planned facilities that are included in the National Capital Trail Network definition, but we did receive a recent correction for a segment of the network in the City of Manassas and Prince William County in the vicinity of Godwin Drive that should have been marked complete instead of not complete, and that has been corrected. So turning to the resolution, as you see, I want to call your attention to the resolve clauses in Resolution R7-2024. And if we could scroll down to to those resolve clauses, which call for the which include the approval of the updated network and the instructions to staff on what we do with this information, but critically an additional item, which is that the TPB calls upon its members to increase the rate of progress of completing planned portions of the network in conjunction with the goals set forth in the TPB's original 2020 approval of the National Capital Trail Network and Resolution R18-2022, which adopted regional transportation greenhouse gas reduction goals and strategies and identified completing the National Capital Trail Network by the year 2030 as a priority strategy. So that is included in the resolved clauses. With that, staff recommends that the TPB adopt Resolution R7-2024 to approve the updated National Capital Trail Network. Staff would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair Henderson.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, well, actually, hold on. We need to adopt the resolution and then we'll ask some questions. Okay. So I move that we adopt Resolution R7-2024 to adopt the updated National Capital Trail Network. Is there a second?
Second.
Tom, if you could just say your name and jurisdiction.
Sorry, Tom Ross, City of Fairfax.
Thank you. All right. Now, are there any questions? I see one. Supervisor Mike Turner.
Yeah, thanks very much, Madam Chair. Is there a mechanism at all? So for this morning, for example, we found out the Ryan Road widening is going to be less expensive. That's a good update. And then also the Belmont Ridge Road and North Star Boulevard is included in the National Capital Trails plan, but it's been shifted. Is there any mechanism in the process of if a change is made to a specific section of the trails that relevant jurisdiction representative is notified fairly timely that change has taken place, maybe as a one-on-one communication of some kind rather than have to wait every 2 years for the update?
We compile information that's provided to us by jurisdictional staffs, and that includes some pretty detailed mapping, geographic information that we'll need to know, pretty zoomed in specifics. And when you look at a 1,500-mile network, that becomes an undertaking. And so we try to do this once every year or two, but we don't really have the ability to constantly update and change it. It's done on a periodic basis.
Okay, that makes sense. Especially, it sounds to me like it's a push information system rather than a pull, meaning our local teams are going to advise you when there's changes to our segments. So I should get notified by that here locally. So that's really helpful. Good answer. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Turner. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I don't see any hands raised in the chat here, Ms. Henderson.
Okay, so we'll move to the vote. Are there any nays and abstentions from the District of Columbia? From Maryland? From Virginia? Other agencies? All right, hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to our informational items. So first, we're going to be briefed on the selected 2024 work activities. We are a month or so past the half-year point of our fiscal year. So Lynn will brief us on several Unified Planning Work Program projects that are currently underway, including work on equity, climate change, safety, and more. This is to refresh our memories of the work that is underway so we can start to look towards what we're going to be working on next fiscal year with our next item. So Lynn?
Great, thanks, Chair Henderson. I would love to see a share of hands, but like, I can't see you. But I will say, how many of you knew what the heck Conti was talking about when he was talking about 6.22 micrograms per liter in his presentation on the change in the federal regs? I don't know if any of you knew. I didn't know, but you know who I'd ask? I'd ask Aaron and Jane and a bunch of people sitting in this room. So anyway, for the next two presentations, I want to start by thanking all of the staff involved. Specifically in this presentation, Sergio, Janie, Catherine, Aaron, Eric, Rachel, and the team leaders, Tim, Andy, Mark, and more. So point here is you guys have access to a lot of people that know a lot of stuff. So keep that in mind as I go through the next couple presentations. All right, I may have drawn the short straw here, but I do want to make sure that you guys all know that we are super talented and we have a lot to offer. So the FY 2024 UPWP was approved by the TPB a year ago, last March at the 2023 meeting. So as a reminder, the UPWP is one of only the 3 documents that the federal government approves for MPOs. So as we look to review and approve the fiscal 2025 UPWP next month, I'm first going to provide an update on current and upcoming activities that project and staff are engaged in or will be starting soon as we continue into the new fiscal year. This portfolio of activities and projects in today's presentation will equip you as decision makers and influencers, as well as professional staff from across the region, to understand and plan for the future. Some of the areas we're focusing on today include equity, safety, climate change, and surveys. Analysis of transportation inequities in disadvantaged communities. Staff will conduct in-depth research and analysis of socioeconomic, demographic, and mobility characteristics of the region's disadvantaged populations to identify their unmet mobility and accessibility needs. The purpose of this study will be to provide our member agencies, local governments, and transit agencies with findings and considerations as they identify future projects, programs, and policies as part of their transportation planning activities. This analysis will include a comparison of the federal government's Justice 40 disadvantaged communities within the TPB's planning area with our equity emphasis areas that the TPB has designated for purposes of its own environmental justice analysis. 2024 Regional Safety Study. In 2024, we are updating and enhancing the roadway safety data deep dive that staff and consultants performed in 2020 and 2021. During the TPB's discussions of safety every year in conjunction with our performance-based planning and programming target setting, with recent trends too often in the wrong direction, we have heard from the board an interest into insights beyond the overall safety numbers. So this year, building on the structure of the 2020-2021 study, we will review more recent data that has become available to update the study. Plus, we will look for additional insights into the nature, frequency, and location of fatal and serious injury crashes through a qualitative assessment and stakeholder questionnaire. We also aim to update the list of safety strategies that the TPB shared with everyone back in 2020. This study will take about a year to complete, but we hope to be able to share interim findings sooner. The study will complement other safety activities during the year, including board level and practitioner level safety forums, and an active year for the Transportation Safety Subcommittee. Implementation considerations for on-road transportation greenhouse gas reduction strategies. Shifting to climate planning activities, as a follow-up to our greenhouse gas reduction goals and strategies that the TPB adopted in June of 2022, staff will examine implementation considerations for on-road greenhouse gas emission reduction strategies. The study will focus on 7 strategies that the TPB identified to be explored in coordination at local and state levels. The project kicked off at the end of January, and a final report is expected this summer. Regional electric vehicle infrastructure deployment. Last month, the TPB Technical Committee received a presentation on the Regional Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Implementation, or REVI, strategy. The REVI strategy is being developed to support state and local governments as they prioritize locations for publicly accessible electric vehicle, or EV, infrastructure deployment to support the adoption of light-duty EVs in the region. This project is being undertaken for 2 reasons. First, the TPB's Climate Change Mitigation Study of 2021 found that of all the strategies analyzed, The highest potential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the on-road transportation sector would be shifting to clean fuels, which includes EVs. And second, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the federal government has made $7.5 billion in funding available for EV charging infrastructure, $5 billion of which is formula funding that is allocated to the states. Staff hope that the REVI strategy will help inform state and local governments in their EV infrastructure planning, as well as support multi-jurisdiction proposals for funding. This project is expected to be completed in late spring. The deliverable will include light-duty EV projections by county and a charging station priority location map. Transportation Resilience Study, Phase 2. As the TPB heard last month, TPB staff has completed several major deliverables as components of the Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan, TRIP, over the course of fiscal 2024. These deliverables include holding the Regional Transportation Resilience Planning Forum, completing the interactive mapping tool and vulnerability assessment, and collecting resilience projects for inclusion in the plan. Staff plans for the TRIP to be completed by the end of June 2024. Coordinated transit onboard data collection. Moving on to data and survey activities, important public transportation passenger trip information used in the regional travel demand forecasting process needs to be updated. To achieve this, TPB staff will partner with WMATA and more than 20 other public transportation providers to coordinate this effort. Coordination and technical assistance provided by TPB staff will help ensure our partner agencies can obtain this information to develop a regional data set on regional public transportation passenger trip characteristics. Regional Travel Survey. The TPB's largest data collection effort is the Regional Travel Survey, or RTS. Historically, this significant undertaking occurred only once a decade and provided critically needed information on the characteristics of travel and on those persons who are making trips. This information is necessary to support regional travel demand forecasting activities. Last year, after evaluating the state of the practice and benchmarking against other large MPOs, staff recommended that TPB conduct the RTS more frequently so these important data can be more timely and current. During fiscal 2024, staff has begun to set the stage for implementing this new RTS format by beginning to develop a work plan and scope of work that will position the TPB to commence this data collection in fiscal 2025. Intercity Bus and Rail Travel Study. MAP 21 introduced federal regulations requiring MPOs to consider intercity bus travel in regional transportation planning. TPB conducted a study in 2016 and has been updating information this past year with a presentation made to the TPB in June 2023 and a work session with intercity travel experts just a few months ago in October 2023. Now, a detailed study on intercity travel will be getting underway in the next month to collect more comprehensive information on intercity travel, including field surveys of travelers to collect data on demographics, trip purpose, origins, and destinations. This information will be used by local and regional planners to help improve equity and access and to identify needs and projects that will make intercity travel better. Travel monitoring and trends analysis. One of the longtime core activities of TPB staff's data and research program is to monitor regional travel and analyze and report on travel trends to inform regional transportation planning. The tools of the trade used for this activity continue to evolve, and staff plans to enhance its travel monitoring program by acquiring a large data set of passively collected trip information from a big data vendor. These data can help provide additional insights into the nature and characteristics of travel trends in the region. As part of this effort, staff will also continue to develop enhanced visualizations and data products and implement new data collection methods focused on obtaining regional travel information on a more frequent and ongoing basis. Regional Activity Centers Update. After every major round of cooperative forecasts, COG examines and updates the map of the regional activity centers. These important designations are locations that will accommodate the majority of the region's future growth and play a central role in achieving regional transportation goals and help focus future transportation investments. The COG Board of Directors approved the Round 10 cooperative forecasts, and during fiscal 2024, staff developed a work plan for updating the regional activity centers. This work is being completed under the oversight of COG's Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee, and the work involves staff using updated data and applying criteria used to identify these areas. Final COG approval of the updated regional activity centers is anticipated in early fiscal 2025. A People's Guide to Transportation Decision-Making in the National Capital Region. Just updated in late 2023. Look how pretty, everybody. Can everybody see? I'm holding it around to all my people in the room. Look how pretty. Anyway, just updated in 2023 as a recommendation from our most recent federal certification review. The People's Guide is a 36-page PDF available on the Getting Involved and public comment page of the COG website. The TPB also has printed copies. I just got them last Thursday. I'm very excited. Anyway, we'll be distributing them to you, to committee members, to our Community Leadership Institute participants, and to planning staff. The guide explains how, when, and where transportation decisions are made in the region, who is involved, the TPB's role in coordination, and how community members can participate in the planning process. We literally used this last week when we met with the Romanian delegation. So it's super useful. Hopefully you will find it as useful as I do. And while it's not on a slide on the same topic of public outreach and education, please get ready to help us drum up a new cohort for our upcoming Community Leadership Institute session, which is scheduled for late April, and you have a flyer in your director's report. So it's supposed to go to the next slide, and it's not going to the next slide. There it goes. Thank you, Kim. All right. This concludes my presentation on our current focus activities that are underway. Of course, these projects are occurring all while staff is hard at work developing Visualize 2050, our new 2026 to 2029 tip, and all of the other ongoing work activities in the UPWP. So in conclusion, I do want to remind you all of the importance of our subject matter expert advisory committees and subcommittees composed of you and your staff. Presentations and information on all of these focus activities come to Tech and TPB after they go through the subcommittees. Data and information collection, responses from staff are of critical importance as we seek to collect and consolidate regional information. As you just heard in the last presentation between Andy and our Prince William County representative, super important that you guys help us out when we ask for stuff. At our committees, this is where we get our great feedback on and develop consensus for all of our work. So thank you. Happy to take questions on any of the stuff we just talked about.
Thank you, Lynn. Does anyone have any questions?
Looking at,
All right. I don't see any.
I don't see any either.
Okay, so we will move on to the next briefing. Next month, we will be asked to adopt the budget and work program for this board for our fiscal year 2025, beginning July 1st. Lynn will preview the planned work activities. Given that the staff's work will continue with federally required work activities, Lynn will focus on some of the new activities and projects that reflect some of our priorities. Lynn?
Great. So this was actually, so Kim, this was item 9. If you could do item 10. So anyway, so while she's switching up presentations, I hope you all learned a little something new from our January TPB UPWP presentation. So I provided some tidbits on the process itself, how best to navigate it, and I also described the annual activities that staff conducts. So this month, we're asking you to take a look at the actual document. So I'm going to walk you through how to read the heart of our budget and also describe some new activities and projects that staff will be engaged in next year, starting in July. So the board will be asked to approve our UPWP next month. So we're almost there. It's not that one. It's the green one. Do you have the green one? We're almost there, sorry. There we go. All right, so she'll have that up in a sec. I could start singing, but that would be bad for all of you. It's coming. I'm watching her do it right here. All right. All right, so diving right in. Okay. All right, So the UPWP, so back to the boring UPWP document, but then I'll get to the fun stuff later. So this is the document that demonstrates how we carry out the MPO activities. It serves as the staff work scope for the upcoming fiscal year. So please be patient as I explain something complicated but necessary for y'all to understand. The board is, after all, going to be asked to approve a $25.5 million budget. So I'm talking about the federal funding that is specifically allocated to the metropolitan transportation planning process. So Federal Highway Administration PL and FTA Section 5303 funding. So keep in mind that MPOs do not compete for federal funding. We are allocated a specific amount through the federal authorization bills, so we know what's available to us. We also don't invoice the federal government directly. Our 3 state DOTs are the direct recipients, so this means they have a special role in our process. Besides having to pay more than the other TPB members, and the rest of you all pay a 10% match through your local COG dues, so you may not even know you're doing it, but that it's a match to the PL and the 5303 funding, excuse me. The state DOTs are also a partner, and they are federally responsible to oversee our process. All right, so now on to the budget. So I would argue that the 3 most important pages of our UPWP document are tables 1, 2, and 3. So if you go to our meeting page and you pull up the draft document and you scroll down, this is exactly, I pulled this directly from the document. So these are our revenue and expenditure summary tables, and I'm literally using them all the time. Of course, that's probably just me, but I would get familiar with these. Right now, we're still finalizing our revenues, so we ask for your patience here. We're pretty close. So starting with table 1, keep in mind that the PL and the 5303 funding only comes only to us. We can spend it in whatever year we want to spend it in, and it doesn't go away. Our revenue totals are combined from 3 pots or buckets, if you will, a combination of old money and new money. So if you look on the left, you can see it described on the left column in the document, right? Also on the slide. First, we have our new federal money, which we've identified as new fiscal 2025 funding. Second, we have old money that was allocated to us that we didn't spend. It's called prior unexpended, and it's actually from the old 2023 UPWP. And the third pot is money that we don't plan to spend by the end of this current fiscal year in June. We call that carryover funding. Carryover is essentially choice funding. We can choose to roll it over immediately into the next fiscal year, like if we have something cool to do right now, or we can wait 2 years to spend it. I'll talk about it later, but also on our meeting page, you should take a look at the carryover memo for the exact details of the activities that we right now plan to carry over. Add all of this up, and we have about $25.5 million to work with in fiscal 2025. So again, we'll continue to work with the states to hammer out the revenue details, and while we're still waiting for confirmation on some of the buckets I mentioned, we think that changes that will happen between now and March are minimal. So if you're following along in the document, tables 2 and 3 on pages 38 and 39 contain what each TPB work activity will cost to complete. Our 10 core activities support the region as a whole and are structured to follow our federal requirements, starting with task 1 called the long range plan. Makes a lot of sense, right? Anyway, in table 2, we also identify each major work activity or category and how much we expect to spend to complete the tasks identified with those activities. All of those activities are detailed in the text in the draft document, and you have already seen those details in that 19-page outline we talked about last month. Table 3 on page 39 is a more detailed accounting explanation of table 2. It breaks down the budget into those categories that our funding agencies need to track and report our spending. So this slide 5 that we have on the screen is a breakdown of table 3. So you can see about how much we plan to spend on staffing, direct and indirect costs, overhead, studies, etc. Okay, moving on to the actual work. We do try really hard to synchronize board interests with our federal requirements. In January, I provided details on our annual or recurring activities. Now I'm going to highlight some specific tasks that we plan to do in this upcoming fiscal year, starting July 1st. I do want to remind you all of the importance of our subject matter expert advisory committees and subcommittees, since all of these activities that I will be describing come to you after they go through our subcommittees and committees, which is where we get great feedback on and develop consensus for all of our work. All right, so here we go. Last year, as I just described in my previous item today, our resiliency planner initiated work on the Regional Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan, or TRIP, which wraps up this June, which is still fiscal 2024. But now we're going to talk about the follow-on work that will continue into the next fiscal year. So drawing on lessons learned during that process, the new work in fiscal 2025 will consist of various analyses: interior flooding, including mapping, case studies to quantify the benefits of potential resilience investments, and sorting and mapping reported impacts to transportation assets during extreme weather events. In addition, now are you ready for this? We're going to convene another subcommittee, just one more meeting to go to. Sorry, I had to say that. Anyway, in the area of travel forecasting, we plan to update the TPB strategic plan for model development, which is used to guide future model development activities. We will also be working to transition our new developmental activity-based travel demand forecasting model, called the Gen 3 model, from the developmental stage to production use. To do this, we will be conducting a series of usability tests, which involve running both the Gen 2 and the Gen 3 models in parallel to ensure that the Gen 3 model is performing adequately and is ready for production use. We also plan to develop a new highway and transit network report for the Gen 3 model. In the area of mobile emissions and climate change planning, new activities include the following. We are beginning to use the EPA's latest mobile emissions model, MOVES 4, for production work, both for development of state implementation plans, or SIPs, and for our own air quality conformity analysis. We may opt for consultant assistance to update the vehicle registration, vehicle identification number, VIN data. It's called VIN, V-I-N. It's refreshed every few years, and it's an input to the MOVES mobile emissions model. Lastly, we will be providing technical support for any on-road greenhouse gas emissions estimates, if needed, that are made for our new greenhouse gas measure associated with performance-based planning and programming. In fiscal 2024, as I mentioned earlier today, we are conducting a new study to examine 7 greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategies that were identified in a 2022 survey of TPB members as needing further study before they could be considered for implementation. Additionally, this study will examine the potential of any other greenhouse gas reduction strategies that were not analyzed as part of our climate change mitigation study back in 2021, but which have the potential to make a significant impact. This study, which just began, which technically in the later half of 2024, is likely to finish, I'm going to translate it to this summer. So it's likely finished this summer, which means 2025. So that's why we're carrying it over, or not carrying it over, but it's good. You're still going to hear us talk about it. One of the largest and most important data collection activities is conducting a large-scale regional household travel survey. As I mentioned in our last agenda item, because of the size and cost of this undertaking, staff has only conducted this activity once every 10 years, the most recent being the 2017 to 2018 Regional Travel Survey, or RTS. Staff has recommended a new format for collecting this information, entailing conducting a survey more frequently. This new approach will be implemented during fiscal 2025. As I mentioned under agenda item 9 a little earlier today, staff will undertake a multi-year process to facilitate regional coordination of future transit onboard surveys to ensure that the surveys provide information needed by both transit agencies and COG TPB staff who use the data to estimate, calibrate, and validate regional travel demand forecasting models. To achieve this, TPB staff will partner with WMATA and more than 20 other public transportation providers to coordinate this effort. Staff briefed the technical committee and several of its subcommittees in fiscal 2024 and coordinated with WMATA on several occasions. During fiscal 2025, further coordination will occur to support agencies' efforts to collect this information. In addition, staff intends to develop and implement a new regional bike and active transportation count program as part of its travel monitoring activities. The safety data deep dive update that we began in fiscal 2024 will continue into fiscal 2025, also mentioned earlier today, to review recent regional crash data to better understand the nature of the region's safety outcomes. Information from jurisdictions regarding local level safety challenges will provide additional information from a qualitative standpoint. A detailed report will be produced, and the effort will also include an update of the safety strategies recommended in the TPB's Regional Roadway Safety Policy. As you are aware, we are on an accelerated schedule to update the plan, which honestly takes up most of the entire department's staff time as literally everyone contributes. We'll look to provide enhancements where we can. Additional enhancements address planning elements that are also components of the plan, including addressing federal performance-based planning and programming requirements, featuring data analysis and supporting target setting. We are looking again to update the National Capital Trail Network, just like we approved a few minutes ago, with this latest information for this TPB prioritized network, as well as updating information on projects that are included in the overall regional bicycle and pedestrian plan database. And we will plan events on topics including micromobility and curbside management, which will be advised by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Subcommittee and the Freight Subcommittee. Following the completion of the Round 10 cooperative forecasts, staff has worked with the planning directors to begin the update of the Regional Activity Centers map as part of our activities to coordinate land use and regional transportation planning. Staff anticipates COG's approval of the updated Regional Activity Centers map in early fiscal 2025. In addition, staff will work with planning directors to support any technical updates to the cooperative forecasts that may be necessary during fiscal 2025. This slide shows additional highlights for fiscal 2025. We will be running another Community Leadership Institute session, also known as CLI, where we hope to turn out another 20 regional transportation graduates to the DMV. Staff will continue to conduct important research and analysis of regional travel trends through its transportation research and data programs. These activities will include in-depth analysis of data from various existing travel surveys and big data sources to understand and describe how the nature of regional travel continues to evolve in a rapidly changing region. Staff will also continue developing travel trends, visualization tools, and information products, and conduct travel monitoring studies and updates. As part of its data programs, staff will also continue to conduct data management, maintain the geographic information system, and produce visualizations of TPB's information products and plans. Staff will continue to support our local, state, and regional DOTs and transit partners through the Technical Assistance Program, which assists our partners with preliminary planning of projects, programs, or policy evaluation that advance metropolitan transportation planning. The TPB supports multimodal initiatives. The next round of Enhanced Mobility or 5310 projects will be awarded in fiscal 2026, a little ways out, but it will be time to start the solicitation process next year. We will also be hoping that your applications to our TAP and TLC programs will reflect needs the TPB identified in the TPB's list of transit access focus areas that the TPB approved. We are also happy that the Regional Roadway Safety Program, established in 2021, is thriving as well, generating significant interest and great project proposals from our jurisdictions. All right, last slide. Our next steps are to continue to refine the estimates and adjust the budget accordingly, and we'll come back to you next month with the final document for approval. We will also be finalizing which activities will not be accomplished this current fiscal 2024 and take the steps to roll them over into the new fiscal 2025 UPWP, which we call carryover funding. So as I mentioned, we already have identified a few projects and activities to move to fiscal 2025, and you should take a look at the memo we've included with the materials. Those carryover activities have already been written into the new draft 2025 UPWP document. So we hope to get any comments you have in the next 2 weeks, preferably by March 6th, please, so we can adequately address them and include them in our final action. So just a reminder, most of this information has already been posted for review as a bulleted list of activities since early January when we released the UPWP outline. So in March, we will ask the board to take 2 actions. First is to amend the 2024 UPWP to remove the carryover funding and to carry it over. So it's one action. And the second action is to approve the new fiscal 2025 UPWP in its entirety. So after board approval on March, we submit to the feds and work begins on July 1st. That's where I saw my one. Anyway, thank you very much. Happy to take questions. I know that was a lot. Sorry.
Thank you, Lynn. Does anyone have any questions? All right, I see Dave.
Good afternoon. It's hard to imagine the staff could be doing more. So thank you very much for the quality of work. and the amount of work that you do. I just wanted to make 3 initial comments. First of all, thank you for the continued focus on highway safety. Each day goes by and we continue to see the tragic events that we hope could be prevented. Secondly, the focus on micromobility. The studies seem to show that travel patterns have changed pretty dramatically and are not necessarily going back to what they were in 2019. A lot of these trips seem to be, at least in some parts of the jurisdiction, local trips. So how are we kind of addressing bike, ped, and micro transit to address the change dynamics and a more rapid study as opposed to every decade would really be important because things have changed pretty dramatically and we're all trying to figure out how to adjust to that. And then finally, this is not attributing fault to anyone, but the rollout of the electric vehicle infrastructure seems to be agonizingly slow. And I'm trying to figure out what's the issue. A lot of money was provided at the federal level, but what's the holdup? And perhaps COG could be useful, TPB, in sort of looking at what are the delays? Why are they there? Are legislative changes needed? Funding criteria changes, et cetera, to move more rapidly? Because this is going to be critical. And yet, a lot of people aren't buying these vehicles because they're not certain they can get them charged. So, I guess my question would be, maybe we could look at what can we do to speed the pipeline up for the electric vehicle infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. I appreciate the points you've made. We will continue to stay laser focused on safety. We met with Chair Henderson in January. She made it very clear that this is also one of her priorities, and we are planning for a regional forum to bring forth some of the most recent tested, proven strategies that we can accelerate on. And I know that Chair Henderson has some ideas about TPB leadership. I don't want to steal her thunder, but more to come. But thank you kindly. On the 2 other points, I will take your 3rd point first, and then I'll take your 2nd point and invite my colleague Tim, who knows more about this than I do, to add to it. On the electric vehicle infrastructure, there is, you're right, in the sense that there's been a lot of new money that's been made available. 7.5 billion was the number that Lynn noted in her briefing earlier. And 5 billion of that is formula funds that goes directly to each of the state DOTs. And the state DOTs are required to do a couple of things. One, they are supposed to submit a strategy, a statewide strategy. And the TPB was briefed on it. I know Maryland and DC have submitted those statewide documents. They have made it available to us. Virginia has developed the strategy. The last we checked, they had not yet submitted it. So I know that they're working on it. But that's just a strategy as how do they plan to go? But they are also required to put out a program by how they will be distributing the money that they will be getting, that 5 billion over 5 years that will be distributed to all of the state DOTs. We have been working with the 3 DOTs on understanding how they plan to allocate that money. We have had some very good conversations with Maryland and the District of Columbia. We have been having conversations with Virginia. Next month, Maryland Department of Transportation will be briefing your technical committee. One of the things with the monies going to the state DOTs, there's a federal requirement that a certain amount be set aside for large metropolitan areas such as the TPB. And the TPB should be consulted and involved in allocating of those funds. That is the program that is under development. and TPB staff has been asking the DOTs to work with us to clearly identify in what way, shape, and form will the TPB be involved in identifying those projects. So we plan to bring that to you. So work is happening. Even before all of this money became available, kudos to many of the TPB member jurisdictions. They had already been working on electric vehicles or alternate fuel vehicles. The state DOTs have all identified a set of corridors as alternate fuel corridors. Many of the TPB members were investing their own money or state funds to begin to implement that infrastructure. We will be planning to bring some briefings to the TPB about some of the local jurisdictions effort. But to get to your point, how can the TPB assist in this? One of the things that Lynn identified, we are currently, the TPB is conducting a study. A consultant has already been hired. The TPB's approach has been, it is great that we have 23 member jurisdictions after today's vote, that each of the member jurisdictions are working on implementing their own EV infrastructure. But in this region, people live in one part of the region and travel to another part of the region. Consistent, reliable, dependable availability of charging infrastructure is critical. So the TPB funded a study to determine, if you look at the entire region, how many chargers would this region, with its 3 million people, 3 million jobs and 5 million people, what is a reasonable number of electric vehicle charging stations the region would need? What type of those chargers would it be best? And what might be some of the optimal locations to install them? This is not the TPB dictating where it should go, but developing a blueprint that the local jurisdictions can then use and apply for these grants, whether those grants are at the federal level or the state level. So I think work is happening, but all of your points are very valid. The vehicle availability has picked up, has gone much faster than the ability to install the charging infrastructures. And those two could come to a head. So we need to pick up pace on it. I think that point is well made. So that's one of the studies that the TPB is doing. We'll continue to assist with the local and state DOTs in the best way TPB can play a regional role. Your second point was on micromobility. You're absolutely correct to note that travel patterns are changing. We have always, during the COVID pandemic, we were talking about a new normal. Today, the discussions in some technical webinars and seminars has been, is this the new normal or are we getting to it, right? So we are beginning to see some trends take shape. Some trends are not as positive as we had hoped, so there is some effort to reverse them, such as bringing people back to the office because there are some unintended consequences of that, particularly on the transit investments regions have made. So we are closely working on it. In terms of micromobility, TPB is investing quite a bit of its funds in purchasing some big data that can provide us both at a regional level and to some degree of confidence at a local level, the different forms of travel modes that people are using, the purposes that they are using. So we are beginning to collect the data. We have already spent money. We have in the process of signing agreements with these vendors. We are looking at that. You saw in Lynn's presentation, we have started a new program where the TPB to date, we were relying on our local DOTs to share with us the bike and ped counts they do. And we are grateful that they are doing that. But this time, the TPB is also investing its own planning funds to start collecting the data on locations that the locals may not be collecting yet, so that we might have a more complete picture of where active modes of transportation is happening. So those are some of the things that we are doing. Tim, anything else you want to add or correct I said?
No, I think you captured it.
very comprehensively, Conti. I think, Mr. Snyder, you're absolutely correct. We have been collecting this through our regional travel surveys, but the nature of micromobility use is changing so rapidly that it is really not adequate to wait until we do such a comprehensive survey, which of course remains necessary from a statistical purpose, but we are looking at other ways to collect. It's really becoming more of a travel monitoring activity, along with all the other modes that we do travel monitoring studies, with vehicle counts, transit ridership, and certainly micromobility counts are becoming more and more part of that. So we're hoping to incorporate that into our overall ongoing travel monitoring activities, not just waiting for those periodic surveys that we collect.
Well, thank you very much for those responses and continued interest, of course, in all the greenhouse gas work. And many of these issues are totally interrelated. So thanks very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to ask the questions.
Thank you. Mr. Turner.
Madam Chair, this is a little peripheral to the discussion, but I do want to bring it up because out in Loudoun County, where we've got Data Center Alley, power is a major issue. I just want to put out there that I did a presentation down at the Virginia Association of Counties in November on the data center situation in Loudoun County and the attendant power situation. And the Dominion rep specifically mentioned that the large migration off of fossil fuel automobiles to electric vehicles and the building of the electric vehicle infrastructure throughout the region is going to put an additional strain on a Northeast power grid that is already significantly constrained. They, at one of the most recent PGM meetings, they mentioned they are taking 11 gigawatts of power off the Northeast grid by decommissioning plants, presumably, and I don't know this for a fact, but presumably a lot of them are fossil fuel plants. And at the same time, they have an increased demand of 7 additional gigawatts of power. So as we begin to build EV infrastructures throughout our TBD region, just be aware of the fact that they're in a severely power constrained environment right now, specifically centered on Loudoun County, but it's going to begin to manifest itself throughout the region, I think, as we go forward in the next 3 to 5 years. Just be aware of that the shift over to electric vehicles and building of our infrastructure may encounter some roadblocks or maybe speed bumps along the way because the PGM grid right now is really taxed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Very good and timely and insightful observation. At COG, where they have the multi-sector regional greenhouse gas reduction goals, they have been generally looking to the TPB to take the lead on some of the transportation-related greenhouse gas reduction strategies and the work. But the Council of Governments, Department of Environmental Planning, has been working on many of the other sectors. So I attend those meetings as well. So I'll be happy to bring that program director. I know that there has been ongoing work between COG and some of the electricity generators, and they have also done some looking into the data centers. So thanks for putting that on my radar. I will make sure that during this upcoming calendar year, we'll bring some briefings on it, because that is turning out to be one of the national things that to watch out for. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. The final thing on our agenda, members will get a briefing on the FY25 Commuter Connections Work Program. You all will remember that TPB administers the regional program that is aimed at managing travel demand and reducing emissions by reducing single occupant vehicles, increasing transit ridership, rideshare by creating carpools and van pools, and walking and biking it as a form of commute to work. As Conti noted earlier, this year, in 2024, we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of this regional program. Dan Sheehan, who's the program manager, will brief us on the budget and plan work activities for fiscal year 2025 starting in July 1. We will be asked to approve the budget and work activities at our next meeting. Dan?
Excellent. Thank you, Chair. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and I am grateful for the opportunity today to brief the board on your Regional Transportation Demand Management, or TDM, program, Commuter Connections. For the next 10 minutes or so, I'll provide you a quick overview of the program, demonstrate the program's impact on the region, and highlight some notable projects slated for the upcoming fiscal year, and outline steps for the TPB's approval process related to the FY25 work program. Now, Commuter Connections is a commuter assistance program for workers traveling throughout the National Capital Region. The program was founded in the 1970s as a means to reduce fuel consumption during the oil crisis by focusing exclusively on providing ride matching services and facilitating carpools. The program has since evolved and expanded over the past 5 decades to be a one-stop shop for all things commute related, which includes a variety of programs and services that we offer to the general public to complement the traditional ride matching program, such as the Guaranteed Ride Home program, which offers free and quick rides home in emergency situations to commuters who rideshare or take transit to work, and incentive programs that offer financial incentives to encourage commuters to shift away from single-occupant vehicles. We also conduct mass marketing and employer outreach activities to spread the word about quality alternatives to drive alone commutes. Each year, we come to the TPB to request approval of the program's annual Commuter Connections Work Program, or CCWP. This program, which was developed by the District, Maryland, and Virginia DOTs with guidance from TPB staff, sets the program's work priorities and deliverables for the fiscal year. The complete FY25 work program is included as a handout for is included as a handout for this meeting and is available for download on the COG website if you wish to review in detail. The CCWP also has a companion strategic plan that defines Commuter Connections as a network of public and private transportation organizations that work together to achieve a common goal of encouraging people in the Washington region to use alternatives to the single-occupant automobile. I like to stress the notion of Commuter Connections as being a network of 24 local programs comprising the regional collective. In short, this program is truly a regional effort and has a unique and tailored impact for each local member jurisdiction. The Commuter Connections program is a direct result of the region's planning process. As part of this process, the TPB undergoes the federally required congestion management process, which evaluates congestion levels on the regional road network and suggests strategies and projects to help reduce congestion levels. This process has identified TDM as an important element in reducing congestion throughout the region. The Commuter Connections TDM program accomplishes congestion reduction by reducing demand for the number of vehicle trips taken, which translates into less hours stuck in traffic for the average motorist. Ideally, in a general sense, the program helps move more people at a reasonable pass-through rate while limiting the need for expensive capacity expanding projects. The program also supports regional air quality goals and is part of the annual update of the region's long-range transportation plan and the Transportation Improvement Program. Results from the program may also help to contribute to performance measures and goals set by the region under the federal funding requirements. There are many benefits associated with the Commuter Connections program beyond the primary goals of congestion reduction and air quality improvements. By accomplishing these two primary goals, the program helps improve travel times and supports local efforts to attract and retain employers by offering commute solutions and commuter benefits that lead to improved quality of life. Additionally, spending less time fighting traffic during a work commute has been linked with reduced stress to the commuter and greater cost savings for commuters. In terms of program reach, the Commuter Connections program focuses on individuals commuting into or within the black bolded outline shown on this map, which is the traditional 8-hour ozone NAICS geography. The commuter shed for the program is quite large, as commutes can originate as far out as Delaware, West Virginia, Southern Pennsylvania, and Central Virginia. This is represented by the counties shaded in pale green in the map. The counties shaded in dark yellow are eligible locations for the Guaranteed Ride Home program and the supplemental GRH program funded by MTA for the Baltimore area and the St. Mary's County in Maryland. This chart shows the Metropolitan Statistical Areas, or MSA, rankings from the American Community Survey published by the U.S. Census for both carpool and transit in large metropolitan regions. Prior to 2020, these percentage rankings were relatively stable with little movement between MSAs. During this time, DC was tied for second in transit use and fourth for carpool, generally speaking. Following the pandemic disruption of 2020, The DC region shifted a greater number of jobs to telework compared to the other regions on this list, which has cut into the percentage of commuters traveling by carpool or transit. As a result, we now rank towards the middle of the pack for carpool and transit use commuter mode share. TPB staff, along with the state DOTs, see it as the program's mission to continue encouraging drive-alone commuters to shift their commute behaviors to carpool and transit when probable, with hopes that we may rise in these rankings in future years. Staff, staff routinely collects data via surveys and participant activity in our programs to determine our overall effectiveness. Our most recent evaluation, which crunches data collected from July 2021 through June 2023, shows that the program helps reduce 119,500 daily vehicle trips and over 2 million vehicle miles of travel each day, which results in eliminating 0.4 tons of NOx and 0.3 tons of VOC emissions. The program also provides a very competitive return on investment, with about just 20 cents for every vehicle trip reduced and a penny for every daily vehicle mile of travel reduced. The 49,000 for every ton of NOx reduced and almost 60,000 for every ton of daily VOC reduced is competitive, with only slight decreases from the prior triennial evaluation cycle. Other notable societal benefits include the number of hours we collectively spend stuck in traffic, which is reduced by 2,883 hours per day, and an estimated savings of around 93,000 gallons of fuel per day. All told, the Commuter Connections program is estimated to produce a daily cost savings of $519,800 for commuters in the region. So now that we've discussed the context and the impacts of the program, the rest of the presentation will focus on budgets and tasks for FY25, which are slated to begin on July 1st of this year. This chart is a comparison of the current fiscal year's budget versus the FY25 budget for the CCWP program element. The largest increase in budget is for the program evaluation element, something that is done every 3 years and produces the state of the commute report for the region. We'll also be updating the program evaluation methodology process, which is a bit of a lift in and of itself. Excuse me for one moment. TPB staff worked with each of the 3 state departments of transportation to develop this proposed budget allocation, which is broken down by program task. Each state's funding commitment is shown in total in the right column. State funding levels are consistent with previously approved formulaic breakdowns based on U.S. Census data, among other items. There's a projected 11% increase in the budget for FY25, and the increase is mainly due to this particular year being a heavy data collection effort year. The FY25 CCWP budget breakdown includes just over 30% of the total budget for COG TPB staff and overhead costs, almost 50% in private sector services, about 10% in pass-through funds to local jurisdictions, and just over 10% in direct costs. New items in the FY25 CCWP include the implementation of the Enhancing Mobility Innovations FTA grant that will enhance van pulling capabilities in equity emphasis areas across the region. We are also celebrating a major program milestone this year, as noted by Chair Henderson, which is the program's 50th anniversary. We're currently planning to commemorate this accomplishment later this calendar year, and we'll take the opportunity to fully launch our new Commuter Cash app at that time. A number of data collection efforts will take place throughout the fiscal year, as listed in the last several bullets on this slide. Notably, work will commence on the 2025 State of the Commute Survey, which is a large undertaking the program facilitates once every 3 years. As I conclude the presentation, I'd like to outline what's transpired thus far in the development of the draft FY25 CCWP and what the board can expect in terms of next steps. The draft work program was developed in conjunction with the state TDM work group, which comprises of staff from all 3 DOTs, VDRPT, and MTA. The work group approved this draft document in January, which was subsequently endorsed by the Commuter Connections subcommittee. The TPB Technical Committee was briefed earlier this month, which has led to today's briefing for the TPB. Members of the TPB are welcome to review the draft work program and submit comments and questions to myself, Conti, or Lynn prior to the March meeting. And I'll be back in front of the board on March 21st, where we'll ask the board to approve the work program with work expected to begin on July 1st of this year. Oh, there we go. Okay. And that is it for our presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dan?
Don't see any hands raised.
All right, I don't see any. As Dan mentioned, this will come up again next month. Will we be asked to approve the budget and work activities at our next meeting? That concludes the last meeting or last item for this agenda. Please note that our next meeting is scheduled as an in-person meeting with a 1-hour work session preceding the meeting Thursday, March 21st at 2024. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith.